The wind kicked up dust as the bus doors hissed open, spraying grit across the faded welcome sign that read, Camp Ironside Training Grounds. Serena Hale stepped off the coach into the Oklahoma heat, her worn hiking boots planting firmly on the cracked tarmac. A duffel bag hung low from her shoulder, its canvas faded, straps frayed. Her clothes, mud-brown cargo pants and a desert-tan shirt rolled up at the sleeves, were practical but unremarkable. No insignia, no patches, no story told, unless someone knew where to look. She moved without hurry. The gate guard barely gave her a glance. A pair of junior soldiers leaned against the chain-link fence nearby, sipping iced coffee and watching her approach. One of them, a sharp-cheeked kid in mirrored sunglasses, tilted his head. "Is she lost?" he muttered. "Who shows up dressed like that?" said the other. Serena said nothing. The heat pressed in around her, humming off the asphalt, thick with the scent of metal, dust, and something more acrid, like oil and scorched rubber. She moved with a steady pace toward the admin building, its prefab walls rattling softly under the wind. Inside, the air conditioning was aggressive, artificial. The room was small, gray walls, a plastic fern, and a front desk staffed by a corporal whose hair was too short even for regulation. He barely looked up. "You here for supply intake?" "No. Hale, Serena Hale, contractor, reporting to training command." He blinked, looked again. Began typing. Behind her, a tall man in a crisp duty uniform emerged from the hallway, his boots squeaking faintly. Lieutenant Travis Denton, mid-30s, by-the-book posture, eyes that scanned people like barcodes. He stopped when he saw her. "You cannot wear that on base," he said flatly. No greeting, no handshake. Serena turned. The room stilled. Denton took a step closer. "You're not authorized to wear military-grade utilities unless you're cleared as active or former with proper insignia." "I'm not wearing insignia," she replied. "But you're not military. You're a civilian consultant. Civilians don't wear that." His voice was not cruel, just tight, trained, practiced in enforcement more than empathy. Serena gave him a nod. "Understood." She shrugged off the bag, set it down beside her, and reached for the hem of her shirt. The room held its breath. She pulled the shirt over her head in one motion, revealing a plain, dark undershirt underneath, and something else. Across her shoulder blades, exposed by the movement, ink sprawled like a banner. A serpent twisted around a field medic's cross, flanked by two broken wings. Beneath it, a date etched in careful black. July 3rd, 2010. Denton froze. A clipboard clattered behind the desk. The corporal stared. The silence was not from the tattoo's appearance. It was from its recognition. No one spoke it aloud, but they all knew. That was not a barracks tattoo. Not the kind someone got off post after 3 beers and a dare. That was earned. That symbol belonged to the team who walked out of the Surge Line massacre, a mission that officially never happened. Rumor said a medic had held off the collapse of an entire forward operating base for 6 hours, treating the wounded, coordinating fire support, and refusing exfil until the last man could walk. The military never named her. But the survivors did. Denton cleared his throat. "Who authorized your contract?" Serena reached into the duffel and pulled a battered manila envelope. Inside, 2 signatures, Major Ainsley Riggs and Colonel Everett Holloway, Joint Forces Advanced Trauma Command. He scanned the paper, twice, then looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "I see," he said, voice lower now. She buttoned a dark gray flannel over her undershirt and retrieved her duffel bag. "Where's medical command?" He pointed down the corridor without a word. She walked past him without another glance. As the door swung shut behind her, the corporal leaned over his terminal and whispered, "Was that her?" Denton said nothing, but he stood straighter than he had a moment before. Outside, the wind died, The lights in the Joint Trauma Training Center buzzed faintly. They always did. Serena Hale stood alone in a side hallway just off the central sim bay, her hand resting on the edge of a glass case holding old field med kits, rusted tourniquets, and cracked syringes from Vietnam and Iraq. A plaque beneath them read, "Pain teaches faster than rank." She was early, by design. A few yards away, the main simulation room waited. Mats, stretchers, mannequins, crates labeled with red or black tags, all arranged in anticipation of her first instruction session. Footsteps echoed behind her. "Ms. Hale?" She turned. Sergeant Major Lenora Briggs. Commanding presence. Mid-50s. Tall, sharp-lined. The kind of woman who could quiet a room by simply entering it. Her eyes held the practiced scrutiny of someone who had seen every kind of mistake and bore the responsibility for fixing all of them. "You're earlier than expected," Briggs said. "I make a habit of watching the room before the room watches me," Serena replied. Briggs allowed a small, respectful nod. "Spoken like someone who knows what not being watched can cost." They stood there for a beat. "Your packet cleared overnight," Briggs continued, handing over a clipboard. "The trainees do not know your background. I'll leave the introduction to your discretion." "Good," Serena said. "Let them see the method before they ask for the resume." Briggs cracked a thin smile, more reflex than emotion. "You'll be working with Squad 2, 12 medics prepping for deployment. They've cleared the standard certs, but they're soft in the places the textbooks can't touch. You'll see what I mean." "Always do," Serena murmured. Briggs paused, then lowered her voice. "You'll also meet Corporal Elijah Red. Young, talented, knows it too. Smart mouth, top scores, zero experience under real fire. He'll test you." Serena said nothing, just reached for a pair of latex gloves and tucked them into her back pocket. Briggs tilted her head slightly. "You ever get tired of being underestimated?" "All the time," Serena said, walking past her into the sim bay. "But it's useful." The 12 medics filed in with varying degrees of curiosity. They stood in a staggered semicircle, some alert, some casual. A few leaned into each other, murmuring. Others kept their gaze straight ahead. Serena faced them with hands in her pockets, civilian clothes plain and unobtrusive. Corporal Elijah Red stood in the center. Early 20s, clean-cut, confident. A jaw that looked like it had never been punched. He folded his arms, studying her with open skepticism. "I'm Serena Hale," she said. "For the next 3 weeks, I'll be running your live scenario trauma drills. You'll hate me by lunch. You'll thank me later. Or you won't. Doesn't change what I'll teach you." Red raised a hand before she finished. "Ma'am, just to clarify, are you a former corpsman or just civilian trauma certified?" The tone was respectful. Technically. Serena didn't answer right away. She walked over to a table, lifted a med bag, and tossed it onto the floor between them. It landed with a dull thud. "I am someone who has done more field work than paperwork, and I will not waste time explaining my resume before you've shown me how you move under pressure." Red blinked. The other medics shifted slightly. "Scenario 1, she said. "Improvised med tent. Mass casualty. Unknown injuries. Limited tools. 3-minute timer." They looked at each other. "No walkthrough?" asked a private near the end of the line. "No," Serena replied. "Life doesn't give you walkthroughs. It gives you bleeding." The room descended into motion. Simulated wounded lay sprawled, some mannequins missing limbs, others pulsing red LED lights under their shirts to indicate internal trauma. The air filled with shouted commands, shuffling feet, the clatter of gear. Serena watched from the side, arms folded. Corporal Red took charge quickly. He issued orders efficiently. But she noted how he favored textbook language, airway secured, pressure applied, litter inbound, as if reciting a checklist. And then the lights flickered. On cue, Serena triggered the scenario fault. Comms down. Red faltered. The silence stretched as he looked around, unsure how to proceed. "Communications failed," Serena called. "Do something." Red tried hand signals. No one caught them. Confusion spread. One of the privates began CPR on a mannequin with spinal injury, textbook wrong. Another applied a tourniquet too high, cutting blood flow entirely. The 3 minutes expired in chaos. Serena knelt beside a casualty that had not been touched. "Dead," she said. "No one triaged him. No one stabilized the airway. He was breathing. You let him drown in his own blood." She stood. Red looked furious. "This was rigged," he said. "There was no way to win this." Serena stepped close, her voice low, firm. "There is no winning in triage. There is only doing better next time. And there is a next time, unless your casualty dies in training because someone couldn't adapt when the plan failed." The room was still. Then a quiet voice from the back. That felt real. Serena turned. Private Callie Vargas, youngest of the group. Her gloves were still shaking. "It was real," Serena said softly. "It always is." That night, as she walked back to her temporary housing, the wind was heavy with coming rain. The sky boiled purple and orange at the edges. Serena paused under a cracked street lamp and rubbed her shoulder. Beneath her shirt, the ink itched. The serpent, the cross, the wings, the date. July 3rd, 2010. They did not know it yet, but eventually, someone always asked, and when they did, it was never about the tattoo. It was about what it cost to earn it. The rain came hard just after midnight, not a gentle drizzle, but thick, slanted drops that hammered the metal rooftops of Camp Ironside like a distant firefight. Serena Hale lay awake on the narrow cot in her quarters, one hand behind her head, the other curled under the edge of the thin government-issue blanket. She did not sleep much. Not anymore. The sound of the storm reminded her of another night, another roof, sheet metal trembling under rotor wash, the smell of diesel, blood, antiseptic, and smoke all mixing into something that never quite washed out of her memory. Lightning flashed. Briefly lit the small room, a desk stacked with old field manuals, a med bag in the corner still half unpacked, and a corkboard above her bed with a single name scrawled in black Sharpie, Red. She was watching. The training center buzzed with artificial light the next morning. Fresh coffee, fresh sarcasm. The tension from the failed scenario still hung in the air, but the medics had learned to mask it behind banter and bravado. Corporal Elijah Red arrived early. His uniform was sharp again. Boots double-laced, shirt tucked, posture militant. He moved like he had something to prove. He always did. Serena stood near the entrance of the sim bay, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. She nodded at him without speaking. "New scenario?" Red asked. "No, something simpler." He raised an eyebrow. "You're going to teach," she said. What?" "You're leading today's drill. You'll choose the scenario, assign roles, and debrief your team afterward." He blinked. "Why?" Serena's tone remained neutral. "Because command doesn't come with permission. It comes with pressure. Let's see how you carry it when the plan's yours." He hesitated, then gave a sharp nod. "Yes, ma'am." She walked away, leaving him standing in front of his team, clipboard shaking slightly in his grip. The simulation began 20 minutes later. Red had chosen a vehicle ambush, close quarters, 3 casualties, burning engine, 1 medic wounded and non-verbal. It was a solid scenario. Complex, but not overwhelming. Predictable. Safe. Too safe. Serena watched from the observation room. On a monitor, she tapped a series of keys. With each one, the conditions changed. First, the fire suppression failed. Then, the second vehicle collapsed into the ditch, closing the path for medevac. Finally, she altered one casualty's vitals to crash midway through treatment. Chaos bloomed again. Red adjusted on the fly, shouting orders, redistributing teams. But his voice cracked. His hands fumbled. His confidence slipped like sand through wet fingers. Private Callie Vargas misread the pulse on her mannequin, declared the casualty dead, moved on. Serena noted the moment, marked it. When the exercise ended, the room went silent. Serena walked in. "You abandoned a viable casualty," she said flatly to Vargas. I thought he was gone." "You assumed. Under pressure. Never assume with a pulse." Red stepped in. "That's on me. I told her to prioritize evac." Serena's eyes flicked to him. "She's wearing the gloves, but you handed her the scalpel." The group shifted uncomfortably. Red stared at the floor. "Let's debrief," Serena said. "Start with failure." Later, as the others filed out, Red stayed behind. The room smelled faintly of sweat and latex. Sim blood stained the mats. "Was this a setup?" he asked. "No," Serena replied. "You changed the parameters mid-scenario. I introduced stress. You chose how to react." He sat on the edge of the stretcher. His voice dropped. "Do you ever stop testing people?" She tilted her head. "No, because combat doesn't." He looked up at her. There was something in his eyes now. Frustration, yes, but also a quiet question. Not about her methods. About her. "You've seen this. All of it. Haven't you?" She didn't answer. He leaned forward. "You move like someone who's been shot at." Silence. "I looked up that date on your tattoo," he added quietly. "July 3rd, 2010. The surge line. That's what they call it, right? No official records, just rumors." Serena's jaw tightened. Her voice came low. "You looking for confirmation?" "I'm looking for context," Red said. "Because we're trying to learn from you, but no one knows who you are. We train with ghosts. I'd just like to know if you're real." She stepped closer. Her boots barely made a sound. "I'm real enough to bury what I've seen, and quiet enough to know that remembering it out loud does not help the dead." Red swallowed hard. His voice dropped. "Then what helps the living?" Serena looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Preparation, humility, and knowing that failure feels like a whisper until it's a scream you can't silence." He nodded, once, then stood, saluted, a gesture that felt less like protocol, more like apology, and left the room. That night, Serena returned to the sim bay alone. She walked through the stillness, brushing her hand across a training dummy's arm, its plastic skin still stained with fake blood. She sat on the floor beside it, closed her eyes, and for a moment, she let the memory come back. The smell of burning sandbags, the sound of bones cracking under pressure, the scream of rotors that never came fast enough, and a face. One face. A young man with a jaw like Red's, whispering, "Am I going to die?" While her hands fought to make the answer no. But there had been no time, and there had been no one left to answer but her. She exhaled, long, slow, measured. The ghost stayed quiet. For now. The sun crawled over the ridgeline slow and angry, painting Camp Ironside in long streaks of fire orange and brass. In the low light, the base looked like it had not moved in years, just baked into the earth, scarred by drills and dry wind. Inside the command office, Colonel Ames Holloway stood at the window, his coffee forgotten, growing cold in his palm. "She's not who they think she is," he said. Opposite him, Master Sergeant Donna Pike tapped her pen against a closed file. mid-40s, steel hair pulled into a severe bun. She had the look of someone who had buried better men than she had served under. "Depends who you ask, sir." "I read the redacted file," Ames said. "July 3rd, 2010. Unnamed medic. 17 stabilized. 3 KIA. 2-hour blackout window. All comms silent." He turned to face her. "You believe it's her?" Donna nodded slowly. "I do." Ames sighed and looked back out the window. "Then we've got a legend walking around in civilian boots, and no one officially knows." "Not no one," Donna replied. "Word's spreading." Ames clenched his jaw. "Keep it from becoming worship." "She doesn't want worship, Colonel. She wants to train medics." He looked down at the dusty quad outside, where 12 trainees were gathering in loose formation. "Then we'd better let her do it." Serena Hale stood in front of the squad, arms crossed, sun casting long shadows behind her. She wore the same dark cargo pants and fitted combat shirt, civilian, but lived in. The kind of clothes that moved like second skin. Today's exercise had no dummies, no fake blood, no simulation room, just terrain. "Welcome to the wire," she said. Behind her stretched an obstacle course built into a gully. Concrete bunkers, mud trenches, narrow tunnels. Every inch designed to break rhythm and force choices. "You'll run this course in pairs, under time pressure, with one complication." She turned. "Your partner's wounded, arms useless, bleeding, one hand only. If they go unconscious, you carry them." Red glanced sideways at Callie Vargas, his partner for the drill. "I'm wounded, or you?" he asked under his breath. Callie gave a half smile. "You talk more. That's a liability." Serena blew the whistle. Pairs surged forward into the mud and noise. 30 minutes later, Serena knelt beside Vargas, who was gasping for breath, her knees caked with dirt. "You cut your evac route short," Serena said. "We were losing time." "Your time means nothing if your patient bleeds out." Callie closed her eyes, wiped mud from her face. "We were improvising." "You were gambling." A pause. Serena softened. "Callie, pain is a better teacher than failure, because pain stays, but it only works if you survive it. Do not mistake fatigue for permission." Callie nodded slowly. Across the course, Red was helping another trainee out of a collapsed trench, his uniform torn at the shoulder. Serena watched him work, not smooth, but deliberate. Less bravado now, more precision. Donna Pike approached from the tree line, arms folded. "Brutal drill." "Realistic," Serena replied. "Your methods are stirring up command." "I am not here to comfort officers." Donna's voice lowered. "You'll have visitors soon. Pentagon types. They've heard the rumors." Serena tensed. "What kind of rumors?" "The kind that put your name next to stories they thought were buried." A long silence. Then Serena said, "Let them dig. Just not in front of my trainees." That evening, the lights flickered in the barracks lounge as thunder rolled across the horizon. The air smelled like ozone and damp canvas. Red sat alone, elbows on his knees, flipping through a spiral notebook filled with hand-sketched field diagrams. Callie dropped into the seat beside him, a bottle of Gatorade in hand. "You ever stop writing?" she asked. He shrugged. "Only when I sleep, which isn't often." She leaned in. "So, you think she's her?" Red paused, closed the notebook. "She never confirms it, but she never denies it either. That tattoo, that date, her hands when she works, it's all there." Callie sipped her drink. "Do you want to know for sure?" Red shook his head. "I want to be the kind of medic who doesn't need to ask." They sat in silence for a while, the rain tapping on the windows like Morse code. Serena stood alone in the sim bay that night. The lights were dimmed, and a radio hummed quietly from an old speaker, an old Johnny Cash song, barely audible. She stared at the training mannequins lying still in their cots, each one tagged with scenarios for tomorrow's drills. Behind her, a voice broke the quiet. "You ever get tired of hiding?" Colonel Holloway stepped into the room. Serena did not turn. "It's not hiding if no one's asking." "They're asking now." She turned slowly. "I didn't come here to be found, Colonel." "I know, but legends have weight, whether you carry them or not." She crossed her arms, voice low. "I'm not a legend. I'm a medic who didn't leave. And that's exactly why they look at you the way they do." Serena glanced at the tags on the mannequins, then back to him. "You gonna pull me off the line?" "No," he said. "I'm gonna stand back and let you work." Another pause. Then, quietly, "But they deserve the truth. Eventually." Serena nodded once. "They'll earn it." The rain picked up again, loud against the roof. Serena turned off the radio. The room fell into silence. "Tomorrow's another day," she said. "Yes," the colonel replied. "And more eyes are coming." The visitors arrived unannounced. Two black SUVs rolled through the east gate of Camp Ironside just after sunrise, tires grinding over gravel like the edge of a blade. No insignia, no flags, just government plates and men in unwrinkled suits with sharp collars and quieter eyes. Colonel Ames Holloway was already waiting. Sergeant Major Pike stood at his shoulder, arms behind her back, unreadable. "Pentagon," Holloway murmured. "You can smell the red tape before they even open the door." One of the doors swung wide. A tall woman stepped out, blonde, tailored jacket, aviators, and a leather portfolio tucked tight to her ribs. "Director Marin Keene," she said, flashing credentials. "Department of Advanced Personnel Records and Strategic Retention." Another man exited beside her, younger, silent, carrying a secure laptop. "We're here for Serena Hale." Serena was mid-exercise in the medical sim bay. Sweat dampened her flannel. Her hands were gloved, movements precise. As she guided two trainees through a tension pneumothorax intervention, the mannequin's chest cavity hissed with pressurized air as the needle slipped into place. "Good," she said, "but too slow. He's dead in real time." She peeled off her gloves. Then she noticed the colonel watching through the observation window, and behind him, the woman in the gray blazer. They met in a briefing room, 4 chairs, no windows, 2 pitchers of water untouched. Keene sat straight-backed, the way people do when they have control but pretend not to enjoy it. "We're not here to cause disruption," she said. "Quite the opposite. We're evaluating high-impact contractors for special retention and legacy integration." Your name came up. Quietly, of course. Serena said nothing. "We're aware of your history, certain classified contributions that were never properly documented in official systems." Serena's voice was dry. "You lost my file." "We buried your file," Keene replied, not missing a beat. "Because some actions are easier to reframe than explain." Serena leaned forward, elbows on the table. "And now?" "Now the culture is shifting. Transparency matters again, especially when it inspires recruits." "Are you asking me to wear a medal?" "No," Keene said. "We're asking if you'd be willing to let us unseal your past, show them who you really are, as part of a legacy campaign." Holloway shifted in his seat. Serena's gaze didn't move. "I didn't come here for legacy," she said. "I came to make sure they stop dying stupid." Keene folded her hands. "This isn't about ego." "No," Serena said. "It's about comfort. You want their hope packaged, neat, digestible, a story without blood." The room went quiet. Then Keene said, "What if one of them needs to know who you were, to become who they need to be?" That evening, Red found her outside the wire, near the south perimeter, where the terrain dipped into a dry creek bed. He stood at a distance for a long minute, watching her. She was sitting cross-legged on a rock, the wind pushing her hair against her face, a cigarette between her fingers burning down slow. "You smoke?" he asked. She didn't turn. "Only when they come digging." He sat beside her. "They're from the Pentagon, right?" "Yes." "They want to turn you into a story." She glanced at him sideways. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "I think the real thing's better than the story." Serena looked up at the sky, orange-gray clouds bruised with dusk. "You ever carry someone until they stopped moving?" she asked. "No," he said quietly. "I have," she said. "I've stitched skin while rounds cracked overhead. I've kept someone alive long enough to hear their last words, then watched them go anyway." Red's hands flexed in his lap. "I don't want to be famous for that. I just want to teach so fewer people have to." He nodded. "I get that." "No," she said. "You're starting to." A long silence followed. Wind through brush. Insects. The sound of breath held too long. Then she stood. "Come with me." They entered the sim bay long after dark. Only emergency lights glowed. The space looked different in shadows, quieter, haunted. Serena pulled a worn case from a locked cabinet. Inside, photographs, documents, a blood-stained field report, dog tags, one set twisted, the chain snapped. She handed him a photo, grainy, dust-covered, a squad of 12, all young, all smiling. One of them was Serena, younger, leaner, eyes harder. Red studied it. "Only 3 of us made it back," she said. "I was the only one still standing." He set the photo down gently. "Why show me this?" "Because you're going to carry someone, Red. Maybe more than one. And when you do, I want you to know that the weight never leaves. You just get stronger beneath it." He looked up at her, and for the first time, he did not see mystery or myth. He saw grief, shaped into purpose. He offered no salute, just a quiet, "Yes, ma'am." She nodded once. No smile, just the slow closing of the case. Outside, the night was still, but somewhere deep in the bones of Camp Ironside, change had begun. Not with announcements, not with medals, but with the soft thud of understanding, like a heartbeat against armor. The heat returned with a vengeance. By midweek, Camp Ironside baked under a steel-colored sky, the humidity clinging to uniforms like a second skin. Sweat pooled in the folds of necks and behind knees, running salt trails through dirt-caked sleeves. But none of that slowed the drills. If anything, Serena Hale turned up the pressure. "Casualties unresponsive, chest rising unevenly," Serena called over the noise. "You've got 30 seconds to decide, tube or decompression." Vargas hesitated, glancing at Red. "I said you, Vargas." "Leadership doesn't wait for permission." Serena stood stone still, clipboard in hand, as the young private fumbled with her gear. Her fingers slipped. She dropped the needle. Time expired. "Patient died," Serena said flatly. "Your hesitation cost breath he couldn't get back." Vargas flinched. Red stepped in. "That's enough." "No, Corporal," Serena cut him off. "It's not enough until they know what it feels like to lose someone before they ever had a chance to save them." The room fell quiet. Sweat dripped from brows, gloves trembled over tourniquets. Serena's voice softened, just slightly. "This is the only place you're allowed to fail without burying anyone for it. Learn here, or lose out there." She turned away before the silence could deepen into resentment. That afternoon, Vargas found her sitting alone at the edge of the motor pool, just beyond the sound of idling trucks. "I froze," the young medic admitted, her voice brittle. And I knew what to do. I just couldn't. Serena didn't look up. She was fixing the webbing on her kit bag, threading it tighter with weathered fingers. That's not failure, she said. That's honesty. Vargas sat slowly beside her, the gravel biting into her palms. Does it ever stop? She asked. The voices? The second guessing? Serena's eyes didn't blink. No, but they get quieter when you earn your own. Vargas waited, unsure what that meant. Serena stood, shouldered her bag, and looked down at her. Fear's not the enemy. Silence is. Speak up next time, even if your voice shakes. Then she walked off toward the sunlit quad, where the air shimmered like heat over asphalt. By the next morning, the whispers had turned into quiet affirmations. It wasn't official. There were no announcements, no command memos. But word of Serena Hale's past had trickled into the ranks like rain into dry soil. Red found himself explaining less and watching more. He noticed the way new recruits stood straighter when she walked by, how trainees leaned in when she spoke, how even the officers began to linger near her drills, not to interfere, but to witness. Something was shifting. Respect not by force, but by gravity. Colonel Holloway watched from the mess hall patio as Serena finished her lecture in the open-air medic circle. Donna Pike stood beside him, arms crossed. She's turned that squad into something sharp, the sergeant major said. Not just skilled, sure. She's not what they expected, Holloway replied. Donna snorted. They expected a consultant with PowerPoints. They got a surgeon forged in mortar fire. He turned to her. You think we're doing the right thing? Letting her stay quiet? She's earned the silence, but she's also earning their trust. Holloway nodded slowly. Then let it ride. That night, Serena stood outside the barracks, watching the sky bleed into black. The wind had cooled. Dust swirled around the base like memory refusing to settle. Red approached, hands in his pockets. You've been quiet. I always am, Serena replied. He waited. Finally, she added, but something tells me you're not here to talk about weather. Red hesitated, then handed her a folded sheet of paper. She opened it. It was a letter. Handwritten. Formal. Nomination for Advanced Field Instruction Certification. Sergeant C. Vargas. Serena read it. Twice. She deserves it, Red said. She learned. The hard way. Serena didn't respond right away. Then, you wrote this after the simulation? I wrote it because of it. She folded the paper carefully. She's not ready yet. Red's jaw tightened. Why? Because she still waits for approval, and medics can't wait. Then, a pause. But she's close. He nodded slowly. She'll get there. She's watching you. Serena gave him a rare look, one that wasn't armor. It was recognition. Then I better not flinch. In the quiet hours after lights out, Serena sat alone at the edge of the training grounds, her dog tags hanging from one hand like a rosary. She let the silence settle over her like dust. Somewhere out in the night, thunder rolled, and in that moment, soft, steady, unspoken, she allowed herself to whisper the names of those who never came home. One by one. Not for closure, not for healing, but to remember that each scar she carried was a life once breathing beneath her hands, and that the silence she kept was never for herself. It was for them. The alarm blared at 0420 hours. Not a drill, not a simulation. The siren that echoed across Camp Ironside that morning was sharp, real, and unannounced. Serena Hale was already up. She'd felt it before the sound ever reached her ears. The kind of pressure that coils in your ribs just before something breaks. She pulled on her boots with methodical speed, grabbed her kit bag from the wall, and was out the door before the second alarm finished its cycle. The West Fuel Depot had gone up in flames. A transport truck had clipped a barricade during a pre-dawn maneuver. Fuel line rupture, electrical spark. Then fire, loud and fast. A chain reaction sent a burst through a secondary supply line. 12 men were injured, 4 critical, 2 pinned. The base's emergency medics scrambled into action, but they weren't enough. The flames were still active. Smoke thickened the air. Visibility dropped. And then someone called her name. Not consultant, not instructor, just, "Hail!" She was already running. Red and Vargas reached the outer perimeter first. Both had suited up without hesitation, even as other trainees stood frozen at the edge of the heat wave. "I need intubation kits, 3 trauma shears, and 2 IV bags now," Serena barked, not looking back. "On it!" Red called. She dropped to her knees beside a scorched uniform and checked for breath. A faint rise of the chest. Still alive. But not for long. Time blurred. Vargas crawled through oil-slicked gravel on her elbows, dragging a pressure bandage toward a second casualty, his leg torn from mid-thigh. She wrapped the stump with bare hands, blood soaking through 2 layers of gloves. Serena worked beside her, calm, efficient. She moved between bodies like a current, issuing clipped instructions, making decisions no manual had time to teach. Pressure here, not there. Good. Don't look at the wound. Look at his eyes. If they go glassy, he's circling. Red appeared at her side, face slick with sweat and soot. "West line's flaring again," he shouted. "Then we have 3 minutes." He nodded. No argument, just motion. They moved. By 05:20, the fires were controlled. By 05:35, 7 of the 12 injured had been stabilized and medevaced. But one soldier, a young mechanic named Flannery, was trapped beneath a collapsed trailer bed, his legs pinned, the metal twisted into heat-warped steel. Base personnel called it impossible. Serena called it not yet. She was inside the collapse zone before command could object. She crawled beneath the edge of the frame, headlamp flickering. Flannery was half-conscious, mumbling something about his daughter's birthday. Serena placed a hand on his neck. "You listen to me," she said softly. "No one's dying here today. Not on my watch." Outside, they could hear orders being shouted, risk assessments, structural integrity warnings. Inside, Serena threaded the tension like a needle. She found the pressure point on his femoral artery, applied a clamp, wrapped it tight. Then she took the pry bar from Red's outstretched hand and began levering the twisted axle off Flannery's legs, inch by inch, muscle shaking, jaw clenched. It moved. Just enough. "Pull!" she ordered. And they did. Together. When it was over, she stood outside the zone, blood smeared across her arms, uniform shredded, lips cracked from the heat. Someone handed her a bottle of water. She ignored it. Instead, she walked to a folding chair and sat, elbows on knees, breath shaking. Not because she was weak, but because the adrenaline had finally left her. Red and Vargas approached slowly. "You saved him," Vargas said, voice quiet. "No," Serena said. "We did." They stood there for a long time, and then, without ceremony, without instruction, Red stepped forward and did something no one on base had done before. He saluted her. Proper, earned, silent. By midday, word had spread, not just of the fire, but of her. The medic who had crawled into hell to pull someone back out. The trainer who had bled beside her students instead of behind a clipboard. Whispers grew in the chow line. Conversations shifted in the officers' quarters. People who had once dismissed her now carried questions in their eyes they were afraid to ask. Some tried to call her a hero. She corrected them with a look. Because heroes ask to be seen. She had never asked. Later that evening, Colonel Holloway stepped into the recovery tent where Serena was stitching a trainee's forearm. "You disobeyed evacuation protocol," he said. "I made a call," she replied, tying off the suture. "You always do." He handed her a sealed folder. "What's this?" she asked. "Declassification request. Your record. Your mission. All of it. I told them you wouldn't sign, but after today, they're asking again." She stared at the folder. "I don't need recognition." "You don't," he said. "But maybe they do." She looked out past the tent flap, where Red was teaching triage to a younger recruit, and Vargas was reorganizing the med bay with new confidence. "You sure this isn't just politics?" she asked. "Everything's politics," he said. "But this might be something better." Serena didn't open the folder. She just held it. Not like a burden, but like a choice. Outside, the wind had shifted again. Cooler now, cleaner, as if something had burned away that needed to. The folder sat unopened on Serena Hale's bunk for 3 days. She left it there deliberately, beside her gloves and field kit, as if waiting to see whether the decision would open itself. It never did. Some choices do not shout. They sit, heavy, patient, waiting for the weight of silence to break you first. Camp Ironside had changed. The trainees moved differently now, quieter in their confidence, sharper in execution. The drills ran smoother. The chatter held fewer jokes, more meaning. Even the officers had stopped looking through Serena. They had started looking at her. But respect, she knew, was never a finish line. It was a fuse, something earned in inches and lost in moments. Red knocked gently on her office door. He carried a thumb drive in one hand and 2 mugs of burnt mess hall coffee in the other. "They're compiling a digital archive," he said. "Real stories, real names. They asked me to contribute." She raised an eyebrow. He shrugged. "They want something from me about you." Serena didn't speak. Red leaned forward slightly. "They asked if I'd write about the day of the depot fire, or about how you taught us the difference between hesitation and cost. Or," he hesitated, "if I'd describe the tattoo." She held his gaze for a beat. "What did you say?" "I said I'd write about the first time you let someone fail in front of you, and how you stayed in the room when they did." That stopped her. He placed 1 mug on her desk. Then the drive, then left without waiting for a response. That night, Serena finally opened the folder. The paper inside smelled faintly of plastic laminate and stale air, like the past refusing to go quietly. July 3rd, 2010. Forward Operating Base Keeler. Surge Line Mass Casualty Event. Medic. Hale, Serena M. Actions. Stabilized, 17 wounded under active fire. Coordinated evac during comms blackout. Re-entered blast zone to recover last man. Declined extraction twice. The pages held her whole war in bullet points. No mention of the blood on her boots. No mention of how the last man she saved bled out 3 hours after liftoff, his hand still clenched around her dog tags. No mention of what it cost. But maybe that was the point. Some truths are never written. Some truths are carried. At 0600, she walked to the command center and placed the folder, unsigned, on Colonel Holloway's desk. "He still has his dog tags," she said. The colonel looked up. "Whose?" "Private Corey Bell," she replied. "The last one. The one who didn't make it." She paused. "His family never asked questions, never wanted answers. I think they knew that silence was the only thing keeping the story sacred." Holloway leaned back. "You're not signing?" "I've already told the story," she said. "Just not with words." He didn't argue. He never did when she made that voice, quiet, sure, final. Later that week, The trainees gathered for their last official field exercise. Simulated chaos again, burned-out convoy, unstable terrain, two actors posing as hostile locals. But the weight was different now. The movements carried intention. The mistakes were fewer. Corrections came faster. Vargas led her team without waiting for instruction. Red applied triage by feel, not textbook. Serena watched from the ridgeline, arms crossed, boots rooted deep in the sand. She didn't call out once. She didn't need to. After the final drill, as the sun collapsed behind the far hills and the first stars freckled the sky, Serena stood beside the perimeter fence, looking out toward nothing. Callie Vargas approached. No salutes, no ceremony, just the silence of mutual understanding. "Am I ready?" Vargas asked. Serena turned. "If you're asking, then yes." Callie nodded slowly. Then, "You think you'll ever leave this place?" Serena thought about it, about the burn of desert wind, the hollow clatter of boots on gravel, the ghosts that sat beside her in the quiet hours and never said a word. "I already did," she said, "a long time ago." On her last morning at Camp Ironside, Serena packed her things into a small duffel. She left no note, no goodbye speech, just her dog tags, coiled gently around a copy of the field manual she had rewritten by hand over the last 8 weeks. She left it on Red's bunk. No inscription, no name, just one line underlined in black. Pain is a teacher, but survival is a legacy. The bus pulled away from the gate in silence. From the rearview mirror, the driver glanced at her. "You military?" he asked. She didn't answer. But as she leaned her head against the window, wind rolling across her face, the sun caught the edge of the ink on her shoulder. The cross, the serpent, the wings, the date. There were no medals pinned to her chest, no plaque hung in her honor. But on that base, in every heartbeat of every medic who passed through her hands, she would never be forgotten. Not because of what she had done, but because of what she made them believe they could survive.